Swimming pools. These places are often seen as oases of relaxation, fun, and fitness. Whether it's the refreshing dip after a long day or a workout routine, pools are supposed to be a peaceful escape from the world. But what if, behind the scenes of those clear blue waters, something much darker was lurking? Today, we're diving into 4 true, creepy stories that all unfolded in or around swimming pools, where something unexpected and terrifying changed the meaning of poolside relaxation. Imagine stepping into a changing room, preparing for a swim, when suddenly the atmosphere shifts from calm to chaos. Or picture this, a sunny afternoon at a backyard pool with friends enjoying a good time, only to have strangers invade and turn the peaceful setting into a nightmare. These aren't just ordinary poolside tales. These are real-life experiences that will make you rethink your next visit to the pool. In this episode, we'll explore the spine-chilling events that occurred in various pool locations, from public gyms to private backyard parties. We'll look at moments where fear, danger, and uncertainty took center stage, leaving those involved shaken and forever changed. So, sit back, relax, but don't get too comfortable, because what we're about to reveal may make you think twice the next time you hear the sound of water splashing in the distance. Get ready for some unsettling, real-life stories from the edge of the pool. Let's dive in. Story 1. The man who went crazy in the changing room. Imagine yourself in the changing room at a public pool, a place meant for relaxation and getting ready for a good swim. You've been sticking to your fitness routine, feeling proud of yourself for making it a habit, 3 times a week without fail. You're chatting with your friends, changing into your swimsuit, and preparing for another swim session. Everything seems perfectly normal, right? But then, without warning, the atmosphere shifts. You hear something, distant, yet unmistakable. A scuffle, loud bangs and shouts echoing from the hallway outside. The noise grows louder, more frantic, and a sense of unease builds up in the pit of your stomach. You freeze for a moment, exchanging confused and nervous glances with your friends. You're not sure what's happening, but something is definitely wrong. Your instincts tell you to stay quiet and stay still, but curiosity pulls your gaze toward the hallway. And that's when it happens. A man bursts through the door of the changing room, his disheveled appearance instantly catching your eye. He's wearing filthy blue shorts, a stained white sleeveless shirt, and his wild, unkempt hair makes it clear he's been through something traumatic. His skin is blotchy, covered in cuts and bruises, and there's something deeply unsettling about the crazed look in his eyes. But the scariest thing about him isn't just his appearance, it's what he's holding in his hands, a large rusted machete. The machete, covered in grime and likely infected with tetanus, looks old and dull. But it's still a weapon, and the sight of it sends a wave of terror over you and your friends. You feel a rush of adrenaline, but your body can't seem to move. Time seems to slow as the man lets out a guttural, animalistic scream, his grip tightening around the machete. It's as if he's lost all control of his senses, and now there's no telling what he might do next. The man charges straight into the changing room, and everything becomes a blur. You instinctively scream, falling backward against the lockers, your heart pounding in your chest. Panic sets in. What do? Do you fight back? Do you run? But before you can even think, the door flies open again, and a group of armed police officers storm in, shouting for the man to stop. They chase him through the room, shouting commands, but the chaos doesn't end there. The man doesn't stop. He runs into the showers, still holding the machete, as the officers chase him across the pool area. The situation is completely out of control, and screams from the pool area only make it worse. A gunshot rings out. You're left in shock, wondering if any of this is even real. Your mind races to process what just happened, but all you can do is sit there in disbelief, trying to understand what went wrong. Miraculously, no one was hurt. The elderly woman who had been pushed by the man during his escape was shaken but unharmed. As the chaos settles and the police clear the area, they come to tell you and your friends that it's safe to leave the changing room. But none of you feel like swimming anymore. Instead, you quickly get dressed and leave the gym, still trying to shake off the feeling of what just occurred. Later, you hear the full story from the police. The man had been roaming the streets, threatening people with his machete, before running into the gym and eventually into the changing room. He was likely high on bath salts or something similar, which explained his erratic behavior. It's a strange kind of relief that no one was seriously hurt, but the fear and confusion linger. The event became something of a legend at the gym. Those of you who were there that day became known as the machete survivors. It was a strange title, and you didn't know whether to laugh or be frightened by it. But one thing is for sure, that man's face, wild and desperate, is something you will never forget. Story 2. The tragic death of Clarky and the bullies at the school pool. Now, let's shift gears to a story from childhood, one that still haunts the narrator to this day. This is a tale of friendship, bullying, and a tragic accident that occurred at a school pool. The narrator and Clarky had been inseparable since their early school days. They met in primary school and quickly became best friends. They shared everything, from toys to the little adventures that made their childhoods unforgettable. But as they transitioned from primary to secondary school, everything changed. Secondary school was a whole new world, bigger, scarier, and filled with older students who seemed like giants compared to the young kids they once were. The shift was jarring, and they weren't prepared for the bullying that came with it. Both Clarky and the narrator found themselves being targeted by a group of older boys, led by Jake and Jonah. These bullies tormented them daily, making their lives miserable. What started as teasing quickly escalated to more cruel and physical acts, and soon enough, their school life was filled with anxiety and fear. Then came the day that everything went wrong, a day at the school pool that would change their lives forever. It started off as just another swimming lesson, something the boys dreaded but had to attend. As they waited outside the changing rooms, they noticed something strange. Jonah and Jake had appeared in the pool area, but they weren't there to swim. The two bullies had come to torment Clarky and the narrator once again. This time, the bullying took a darker turn. Jonah and Jake were playing their usual game of mocking the boys, but this time, they were focused on a drain at the bottom of the pool. They dared Clarky to stick his head into one of the open drain holes. At first, Clarky hesitated, but in his desire to avoid further humiliation, he eventually agreed to do it. What followed was nothing short of tragic. As Clarky leaned in to look into the hole, Jonah and Jake saw an opportunity to make the situation even worse. Without warning, Jonah quickly shoved the metal grate back down over Clarky's head, trapping him. In an instant, Clarky started to struggle, flailing in the water, gasping for air.
The narrator tried to swim over to help, but it was too late. The angle of the drain and the weight of the grate caused Clarky's neck to snap, and he went limp in the water. The horrible cracking sound still echoes in the narrator's mind to this day. In that moment, the world seemed to freeze. Clarky, the boy who had always been full of life and energy, was gone in an instant. What followed was sheer panic, as the narrator pulled Clarky's body free from the drain, but it was clear there was no saving him. The other boys, Jonah and Jake, stood in shock, their faces pale. They never meant for this to happen, but it didn't matter. The damage had been done. Instead of helping, they ran, leaving the narrator alone with Clarky's lifeless body. The incident was covered up. The official story was that Clarky had been fooling around and accidentally hurt himself. But the truth was clear to the narrator. This wasn't just an accident. The bullies' cruelty had caused this. For years, the narrator carried the guilt of not telling the truth, of protecting the bullies in an attempt to avoid further retribution. But deep down, the narrator knew that Clarky's death was more than just a tragic accident. It was the result of bullying gone too far. And despite the time that has passed, the weight of that moment still lingers, as the narrator wonders whether they could have done more to save their friend. This tragic story serves as a painful reminder of how bullying can escalate into something far worse. It's not just about words, it's about actions, and sometimes those actions can have devastating consequences. The narrator may never fully recover from the guilt of that day, but the one thing that stays with them is the image of their best friend, gone too soon. Story 3. The creepy encounter with Dom in the changing room. Let's now take a step into a much creepier territory, an unsettling experience at school that, to this day, still sends chills down the narrator's spine. This story takes place at a small charter school in the countryside, where the atmosphere seemed a little off from the start. The school, housed in an old converted mansion, felt like it had a history of its own, one that wasn't entirely welcoming. The principal, Mrs. Howe, had a no-nonsense attitude, but her husband, Mr. Howe, was the real source of discomfort for the narrator. Mr. Howe wasn't a teacher, he was more of a business type, awkward in his presence, but always lingering around the school. He had an air of creepiness that the kids couldn't quite put into words, but they all felt it. His tall, lanky frame, thinning hair, and watery eyes were enough to make anyone uneasy. Still, it wasn't just his strange demeanor, it was his inappropriate behavior that crossed the line. He made the narrator feel uncomfortable from day one. Now, there was one particular incident that the narrator will never forget, an event that happened in the school's swimming pool changing room. It was a hot summer day, and the narrator had stayed behind after swimming lessons to change out of their swimsuit. The other students had already left, and the narrator was alone in the boys' changing room. That's when Dom, the principal's adult son, barged in. Dom was in his 20s, tall, and far too often seen wandering around the school. His presence around the children made them uneasy, especially since he wasn't a teacher and had no real reason to be there. But that day, he had a particular agenda. Dom's behavior had already been strange in the past, but this time it crossed the line. The narrator was halfway through changing when Dom burst into the room with his usual boo, a joke that he had made before, but it was far from funny now. The door slammed shut behind him, and he just stood there, arms folded, watching the narrator as if nothing was wrong. At first, the narrator tried to ignore it, feeling uncomfortable but unable to speak up. Dom's gaze was uncomfortably fixed, and the narrator, a young child, didn't know how to voice their distress. Dom continued to stand there, holding the narrator's swim trunks in front of them, making it impossible for them to change without feeling completely exposed. The narrator was panicking, heart racing. Dom's behavior felt predatory, and the narrator's instincts screamed that something was wrong. Then, without warning, Dom grabbed the narrator by the shoulders, pulling them up from the bench. In that moment, everything felt wrong, but what happened next was even worse. As Dom tried to guide the narrator to their feet, there was a loud noise, an unexpected thump. The ceiling above them gave way, and a wasp nest, hidden in the rafters, fell to the ground, releasing a swarm of angry wasps into the air. Panic set in. Dom ran for the door, screaming as the wasps attacked him, but the narrator was still left in the chaos. The wasps swarmed around them, and though the narrator was only stung once on the shoulder, the terror of being trapped with Dom was the true horror. Dom finally managed to open the door and escape, but the sting on the narrator's shoulder and the memory of Dom's presence haunted them far more than the pain from the wasps. After the incident, Dom was never seen around the school again. The narrator later found out that the principal and her husband were involved in some shady dealings, and the school had more secrets than anyone realized. Dom's creepy behavior was just the tip of the iceberg, and the narrator had been lucky to escape that day. This disturbing story isn't just about Dom's inappropriate actions. It's a chilling reminder of how adults in positions of power can sometimes cross boundaries, and how the unsettling feeling of something off should never be ignored. Thankfully, the wasp incident provided an unintentional escape for the narrator, but Dom's actions left a lasting mark. Story 4. The terrifying backyard pool incident. For our final story, we move away from school pools and into the private confines of a backyard, where things go from casual fun to terrifyingly dangerous in a matter of moments. Picture this. It's a warm summer evening, and you and your friends are enjoying a laid-back pool party. The air smells like sunscreen, laughter fills the space, and there's the distant hum of music playing from the neighboring yard. Everything feels calm, the kind of evening you'd want to remember forever. The narrator and their friends, 4 girls in total, are just kicking back by the pool, sipping cocktails and enjoying a rare moment of peace after a busy semester. The sky is painted in warm hues as the sun begins to set, and everything feels perfect. You're surrounded by familiar faces, and there's a sense of safety in the moment, a feeling that nothing could disrupt the serenity of the evening. But then, something happens. The back gate to the property opens, At first, it doesn't seem strange. After all, one of the girls, Janet, is expected home soon, and she often uses the back gate. But when the narrator turns around and sees 3 men walking into the yard, everything shifts. The men look like they're in their 20s, confident and casual, but there's something unsettling about the way they move. They're not familiar faces, and no one in the group recognizes them. That's when the red flags start to rise. The men introduce themselves, but it's clear they're not being entirely truthful. They claim to be friends of Janet, which seems odd considering none of the girls in the group have ever seen them before. But they act as if they belong, and at first, the girls brush it off. Maybe they're just here to hang out. But when one of the men, Chad, starts lingering a little too close to the pool, eyeing the girls in a way that makes everyone uncomfortable, it's hard to ignore the growing sense of unease. Then, things take a turn for the worse. Chad, who had been laughing and joking around, suddenly gets serious. He tells the girls that Janet owes them money. The girls are confused. Janet, the sensible one in the group, doesn't owe anyone money. Something feels wrong, but they can't quite put their finger on it. As the tension builds, the men start circling the pool, edging closer to the girls, and that's when the worst happens. Vlad, the silent one in the group, lifts the pool ladder and moves it out of the way, trapping the girls in the water. Panic rises. The girls are now trapped in the pool, unable to escape without the ladder, and the men are playing games, taunting them with cruel words. Chad even threatens to hurt them, his eyes gleaming with malice. What started as a fun evening has turned into a nightmare. The girls are trying to stay calm, but they can feel the danger closing in. When one of the men, Brad, pushes Dana back into the pool with more force than necessary, it becomes clear that these guys are not just looking to talk. They're looking to control the situation. As things escalate, the girls become desperate. Kelly, who had been quiet up until then, finally asks them to leave. But instead of backing off, Chad becomes more aggressive, pulling out a switchblade from his pocket and threatening to hurt them. He says the girls either pay the debt or deal with the consequences. The group is terrified, realizing that they're dealing with dangerous people. In a desperate bid to protect themselves, Kelly manages to escape the men's grip and runs to the house, hoping to get help. She smashes a lamp into Chad's face, causing him to stumble back in pain. The men, now enraged, make a run for the gate, but the girls are not done fighting. Kelly grabs a golf club from the yard, swinging it hard and cracking Brad's arm in the process. As the men flee, one of the neighbors, Mr. Peterson, rushes in with other adults, unaware of the situation unfolding. But it's too late for the men, they've already bolted. Vlad, however, remains behind, frozen in place, and the girls finally manage to get help. The police arrive shortly after, and the men are identified as local college students, nothing more than bullies hiding behind their age and charm. The girls' worst fears are confirmed when the police investigate their background, revealing that they were involved in a much darker world of drugs and violence. Though the girls had fought back bravely, the situation left a lasting impact. They had narrowly escaped something far worse that night. This terrifying experience wasn't just about the physical threat. It was the realization that the men were out to intimidate and control. It's a chilling reminder of how vulnerable people can feel when someone crosses boundaries, and how quickly an innocent evening can turn into a struggle for survival. In the aftermath, the girls were left shaken, but they also knew that they had fought back. Despite the trauma, they had survived. The men might have gotten away that night, but they were eventually tracked down. As for the girls, their friendship was stronger than ever, but the memory of that terrifying evening would linger in their minds forever. And that's where this story ends. A night of fun turned into a nightmare, and a reminder to always trust your instincts and fight back when things feel wrong. Conclusion: a darker side of swimming pools. As we wrap up these unsettling stories, one thing becomes clear. While swimming pools are often seen as a place of relaxation and recreation, they can also be the backdrop for some of the most terrifying and unpredictable experiences. Whether it's a random attack in the changing room, a childhood tragedy involving bullying, or an evening turned into a life or death struggle, these real-life stories remind us that danger can appear when we least expect it, even in the most seemingly safe and familiar places. What stands out in each of these stories is the sheer unpredictability of the events. In the first tale, the author and their friends were simply in the changing room, preparing for a swim, when they were faced with a man who seemed completely out of his mind. The chaos that followed was nothing short of a nightmare. In the second story, the tragic death of Clarky serves as a haunting reminder of the dangers of bullying and how sometimes even innocent moments can spiral into something far worse. And in the third and fourth stories, we saw how unsuspecting situations, whether a visit to the changing room or a backyard pool party, can quickly turn into a fight for survival. For those involved, these incidents didn't just end when the police arrived or when the danger passed. The memories lingered, and the emotional scars lasted much longer than any physical injuries. These stories aren't just about the terror that occurred in those moments, but the lasting impact they had on the people who experienced them. While these tales are deeply unsettling, they serve as important reminders about the importance of safety, awareness, and trust. Always trust your instincts, be aware of your surroundings, and know that sometimes things are not as safe as they seem. It's easy to let your guard down in familiar places, but as these stories show, it's often in those very moments of comfort that danger can strike. We hope these stories gave you a glimpse into a darker side of the world we often take for granted. And remember, the next time you're near a swimming pool or changing room, take a moment to appreciate how quickly things can change, and how being alert and prepared can make all the difference. Thank you for joining us for these chilling real-life stories. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and always trust your gut, because you never know when something might come out of the water and change everything.